Here's how I find houses in pre-foreclosure to flip. All right, guys, with all of the talk of foreclosures and things that are happening, I think it's really important to talk about pre-foreclosures. Find those to help you find properties to flip. Basically, the foreclosure process is public. Someone getting behind on their payments is not public. So the process basically happens like this. If a bank has somebody that's behind on their payments, they typically issue them a 30-day late notice that says, hey, you're 30 days late. With that, they typically ding their credit report to say you now have a 30-day late on your credit. Now, if that doesn't get paid and continued, then the bank's gonna say you have a 60-day late, and they're typically gonna ding their credit on a 60-day late. And then it's gonna get to the point where it's a 90-day late. They'll ding the credit report for a 90-day late. At that point, they call that seriously delinquent once it's 90 days plus. So prior to 90 days, they call it delinquent. Over 90 days, that's when they call it seriously delinquent. And depending upon the bank and what their policies are and their investors and those types of things, somewhere after that 90-day mark, now they could do it sooner if they want to, but most of them don't. But somewhere around that 90-day mark, they do what's called a demand letter. And they send out a demand letter, and that demand letter basically says, you owe us this money, pay us right now, or we're gonna start the foreclosure process. Typically what happens after that is a notice of default or a lis pendens, depending upon what state the property is located in. Lis pendens means legal action is coming, so we're giving you notice of that. Notice of default is basically saying we want to notify the whole world that this person's in default. Now, both of those are public information, so you can go get a list of lis pendens or notice of defaults in whatever city or state that you're looking to do. There's different ways to go about doing that, and so you can get that list. Once you have that list, you can go talk to those people. The other thing that happens is once the notice of default has happened, there's a waiting period, which is different depending upon what state you're located in, to have them try and get that paid or brought current or whatever the case may be that the bank's looking for there. Then what happens is a notice of sale. Now the notice of sale basically says on this day at this time we're going to be selling this property or auctioning this property off to the highest bidder. And so who's doing that is the bank. So then what will happen is that auction date will come, and if the borrower, the owner of the house, doesn't bring the loan current or pay the loan off, then what's going to happen is an auction's going to be held. What's happening is the bank is actually conducting that auction, and the bank is going to start, it's done by their attorney or a trustee that is assigned to that, but they're going to start the auction off typically for what they're owed. Now, if somebody bids more than what they're owed, which includes legal fees, late fees, interest, that type of stuff, then that person would then become the owner of the property. They'd have some time, typically 24 hours, a little different depending upon the state, where they would have to pay in full. They'd pay the trustee, and then that would pay the bank, and then they would become the owner of the property. Now, if nobody bids on the property, then the bank makes that initial bid. They're the first bidder, and the bank now is the owner of the property. Now with that, what needs to happen next is the bank is then going to have to do an eviction if somebody's living in the property, or if not, and there's contents, they may have to do what's called a personal property eviction to get the person out or to get the contents out. And if the contents don't get out, then they can sell them or donate them to charity once they've gone through that personal property eviction. A little different based upon states, but just to give you some general information here. To go to the question is how I find houses in the pre-foreclosure to flip, I'm looking at the notice of defaults or lis pendens, and I'm looking at the notice of sales. There's two psychologies of thought here. See, the notice of default and the lis pendens gives you more time because they haven't scheduled a sell yet. This is good and this is bad. Some people, that motivates them enough to take some action to sell their house to let me help them with it. Other people, they just bury their head more in the sand. So does it make sense to go after them early? Maybe. Maybe not. It depends on the person. That can be a little bit difficult. Now, the downside to going after the notice of sale is that you only have typically 30 days. So you may have 30 days from that time, which means you got to move pretty quickly, which can create some challenges. However, the homeowner is typically more motivated if you're going after them if they have a notice of sale. Like I said, notice of sale, lis pendens, defaults, that is all public information. It's recorded against the courts because they want everyone to know about this, because because they want to have bidders. They want to make sure there's no other lien holders, or they've had the opportunity. That's all part of what's called this foreclosure process. That's the opportunity there, is getting those and looking at those properties and seeing how you can help them. Now, there's several ways to go about doing this. Once you obtain that list, you can skip trace, get their phone number and email address and call them. You can stop by and knock on their doors. If you're going to do that, I recommend doing it in the evenings and on the weekends. Now, if you are going to do that, I recommend just being very direct, either in the phone conversation or knocking on the door. And you say, as a matter of public record, I understand you're having some trouble with XYZ Bank, whatever bank they have the loan with, Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, whatever. I understand you're having some trouble with Bank of America. I work with people that have troubles in this type of process, and I'd love to help you out. What's going on? How can I help you? Oh, no, we're okay. I understand, but as a matter of public record, the court of whatever county says it's not. So are you saying it's completely paid? Because what I want to do is make sure that's the case, because I don't want you to have any further troubles. What's your name, telephone number, email address, so I can verify all that and make sure, because I don't want you to think that it's solved when it's not, because most of them just want to be like, oh, we're okay. We want to get down to the bottom of actually what's happening here and make sure they pull their head out of the sand so that we can help them in whatever way that we possibly can. So that's what we're looking at here, is going after the notice of sales, notice of defaults, or list pendants in that process, contacting them through one of these variety of ways, being very direct, making sure they've actually got the situation taken care of, is really what we want to be doing and how we really want to be helping them. So these are some things to look at as you're looking at these pre-foreclosure houses to flip. If you are interested in flipping these foreclosure properties, I've got some tips on how to make offers on investment properties. I've got a video put together on that. I'll put it on the screen so you can check it out. We'll go through what types of deals you should be targeting, how to make your offers, what to get the seller and how to negotiate the seller against themselves, are all things you should check out. So I'll put that video on here. Otherwise, make it a very profitable day, and bye for now.